problem with a topic like sex education is it's a very hush-hush topic. You tend to brush it off, you tend to laugh it off. And so it's important through formal education to normalize that conversation.
अगर स्कूल्स में हम लोग को इस नॉलेज नहीं मिलेगी तो बच्चे इंटरनेट पे जाएंगे और वहाँ पे वो कहीं ना कहीं मिसगाइड होते हैं.
I think it's not about the biology, it's empowering your knowledge, your mind.
Namaste and welcome viewers to another brand new episode of Campus Mirror. I'm Ashish Parekh and we are back here at the Bennett University campus talking about another topic that affects the youth. In fact, this is a topic that has always affected the youth, but there's a lot of stigma around it. There's a lot of shame attached to it in India, so much so that many states have refused to talk about it. They've even banned it. I'm talking about sex education in schools and colleges, and the reason why we're talking about this topic this week is because of a powerful statement by the Supreme Court earlier this week. While giving a landmark verdict in a child pornography case, the Supreme Court noted that sex education in India is very much needed, and it also made it clear, the top court also made it clear that sex education in India isn't a Western concept. This is something that we all need to talk about, and this is something that should be spoken about in schools and colleges. So right now, we are here speaking to some of the students, understanding what they think about sex education. How important do you think it is in schools and colleges?
I would say, in my opinion, it should be introduced in the colleges and the universities, as everyone, all the students should know about STD, STIs and all the diseases also. They should be educated by the root, from the root. In my opinion, it's a very must for the college students.
It's, like you say, it's must for the college students. I mean, you come from a generation where at least there was a little discussion about it, but do you think it is enough? Do you think enough is spoken about sex education? Children are educated enough in schools and colleges in India?
Not yet right now. They should be, in my opinion, उनको और थोड़ा मौका मिलना चाहिए. They should be more enhanced. वो खुल नहीं पाते हैं, अपने मेंटोर से खुल सकते हैं. They can ask the adult to help them in this thing, but still they are not doing right now.
When we say sex education, what do you think? What should the youngsters be educated about?
Like, if I give my example, what happens in India is during our biology classes, teachers try to skip, which is I think chapter 8 or chapter 10 related to reproduction. So if our teachers in school background, they teaches us, they help us to teach what is this all stuff is related to. So I think we can overcome this problem.
At school level, teachers are very particular about, even if you sit with a boy in a classroom, teachers actually raise an eyebrow at you and question why you're sitting. And even if that boy is your friend, they assume that you guys are in a relationship and there's something wrong happening. So which puts both the genders into a state of curiosity. And it's true that the more you keep somebody away from a particular thing, the more curious they get and the more they want to discover it. And in India, a lot of times, boys and girls, they go on pornographic sites and see these videos and make up their mind about how it is supposed to be, and when they don't see it turning out to be in that particular way, they're quite disappointed and a lot of violence takes place.
This is an issue that starts right from the teachers as well, and it has to be something that is spoken about in schools and colleges. The other thing is the Supreme Court made it very clear that comprehensive sex education is very important in India. And the problem here in India right now is that when we say sex education, everyone thinks it's just about biology. It's not just about biology. It's about gender equality, it's about consent, and it's also teaching people about sexual well-being as well. Do you think the problem is the fact that a lot of students, a lot of youngsters actually refer to the internet for materials or information about sex education? And the problem here is that a lot of information on the internet is unregulated. There's a lot of misinformation. So do you think that also misguides them? They learn from the wrong sources, they learn the wrong things.
Yeah, that's actually true. Usually youth search things on internet and वो उसी पे ही ज़्यादा चीज़ें सर्च करके और उसी चीज़ों पे चलते हैं. Instead, school should teach us about all these things like sex education. A month ago, there was a case in Mumbai where two girls were actually done something wrong by the sweeper in the school. और उनको इस टाइम पे नहीं पता था that what's good touch और what's bad touch. तो ये सब कुछ चीज़ें स्कूल लेवल पे ही पढ़ा देनी चाहिए. इससे पहले कि बच्चे वो आके नेट पे सर्च करें और उनको उस चीज़ों को अच्छे से वो समझ तो पाएंगे नहीं. It's not like properly taught to them. So it should.
Okay. So clearly there's a knowledge gap, there's a lack of resources as well. Do you think the problem also is that a lot of youngsters in India refer to the internet?
या 100% एक्चुअली अगर स्कूल्स में हम लोग को इस नॉलेज नहीं मिलेगी तो बच्चे इंटरनेट पे जाएंगे और वहाँ पे वो कहीं ना कहीं मिसगाइड होते हैं और पोर्नोग्राफी के थ्रू सीखने की ट्राई करते हैं. बट पोर्नोग्राफी और ये सब जितने भी चीज़ें हैं ये कहीं ना कहीं एड्रेनलिन रश इंसान के अंदर बढ़ाती हैं. और जो एक्चुअल में जो हमारे इंडियन ट्रेडिशन था कामा सूत्र वगैरह, इस चीज़ों से हम लोगों को बहुत ज़्यादा ना दूर कर दिया गया है. ये सेक्स एजुकेशन या फिर हमारा जो नॉलेज सिस्टम है इंडिया का, उस वजह से. तो हाँ, पढ़ाना चाहिए स्टार्टिंग से ही, क्योंकि प्यूबर्टी की एज स्कूल्स में शुरू हो जाती है. कॉलेजेस में आते आते बच्चा ठीक है वो पोर्नोग्राफी में कहीं ना कहीं इन्वॉल्व हो ही जाता है. तो अगर प्यूबर्टी की एज में बच्चों को सिखा दिया जाए स्कूल्स में, तो शायद से वो कॉलेजेस में आके या फिर जब बड़ा हो जाएगा तो उन चीज़ों को समझेगा. और जेंडर इक्वालिटी भी वहीं से कहीं ना कहीं आ जाती है. तो
Do you
ये
think parents and teachers also play a very important role? Like one of your friends here said that when it comes to teachers, they try to skip the reproduction chapter in biology classes. When it comes to parents, they're also hesitant to talk about it. So do you think this initiative has to come in from there as well?
या एक बहुत टैबू सब्जेक्ट बना रखा है सेक्स एजुकेशन को कहीं ना कहीं, और वो हमारी अपब्रिंगिंग से ही हम लोगों को सिखाया जाता है. लाइक अगर हमने घर पे भी कुछ भी अगर सेक्स वर्ड का भी इस्तेमाल कर लिया तो घर पे लगता है ओ माय गॉड, ओ क्या बोल दिया इन्होंने. लाइक तो ये जो वर्ड्स हैं इनको इतना टैबू नहीं बना के बहुत कंफर्टेबली बच्चों को समझाना चाहिए, जिससे कि वो अपने टीचर्स से, अपने पेरेंट्स से, अपने बड़े ब्रदर या फिर सिस्टर से इन सब चीज़ों के आराम से बात कर सके.
Open discussions are important because if they'll come to know about all these things, they'll set some boundaries for themselves and they'll come to know what is a correct way to touch a girl or a boy. And they will also come to know ki if we are doing something can traumatize someone else. और ऐसे काफ़ी सारे केसेस हैं जो हमने देखे हैं कि जिनमें लड़की के साथ कुछ बचपन में होता है या तो उसके रिलेटिव्स करते हैं या कुछ, तो वो अपने फैमिली के साथ क्यों नहीं डिस्कस कर पाती, क्योंकि ये बहुत ज़्यादा ऐसा कंसेप्ट बना दिया है, एक इतना टैबू सब्जेक्ट बना दिया है कि वहाँ पे वो कुछ बोल ही नहीं पाती. उसे लगता है कि इफ़ आई विल से समथिंग दे विल थिंक कि शायद मेरी ही गलती है. और ये सिर्फ रीज़न क्या है, इसका कल्चरल और सोसाइटल बिलीव्स की वजह से ये सब हो रहा है. और हम ओपन अप क्यों नहीं हो पाते अपने पेरेंट्स के साथ, because they think कि if they'll tell us something about sex education, they'll teach us about all these topics, they think कि हम उन चीज़ों में indulge हो जाएंगे, but it's not like that always.
A very interesting point here that is being raised by one of the students is the fact that we really need to understand, and this is something that it's not just limited to youngsters and parents and teachers, even the state governments across the nation are of the opinion, while they're refusing sex education, that educating youngsters about sex, about things like that, will in fact enhance irresponsible behavior. It will make them much more sexually active. But the Supreme Court also is of the opinion that this is not true. This will only help them make a very informed choice.
Sir, actually it's not about teachers teaching kids about sex education or parents telling their kids that what's a good touch or bad touch. वो तो अपने बच्चे को सिखा देंगे, but जो बाहर उनके साथ होगा वो चीज़ें उन्हें नहीं पता ना वो कब होंगी. So according to me, government should play a very big role. I should not say this, but I'll say that our government is corrupt. But हमारी कंट्री काफ़ी इन चीज़ों में पीछे है, हमारी गवर्नमेंट काफ़ी पीछे है. जैसे 2012 में एक केस हुआ था, निर्भया केस, दिल्ली में, सबके सामने हुआ था, बस में हुआ था, और कितने 8 साल लग गए उन बंदों को हैंग करने में. दे वर हैंगिंग 2020 और कुछ भी नहीं हुआ. दे वर रोमिंग हेयर एंड देयर फॉर 8 years. कुछ भी हमारी गवर्नमेंट. सो अकॉर्डिंग टू मी गवर्नमेंट को इस चीज़ों में एक्शन लेना चाहिए. बच्चों को ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा स्कूल में पढ़ाना चाहिए, स्कीम्स होनी चाहिए, जो कि नहीं है. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. मैं अगर अपने उसमें भी बताऊं, मुझे आज तक ना ही मेरे पेरेंट्स ने कभी इन चीज़ों के बारे में समझाया, बिकॉज आई एम फ्रॉम हरियाणा. काफ़ी लोगों की सोच वहाँ पे बैकवर्ड है, वो इतना नहीं सोचते हैं. और टीचर्स भी जब ये चैप्टर आता है तो वो इन चीज़ों को स्किप कर देती हैं, बिकॉज बॉयज स्टार्ट, मतलब मेरी क्लास में तो ये होता है, बॉयज यूज टू स्टार्ट लाफिंग और गर्ल्स देन यूज टू फील शाय. तो इन चीज़ों के ऊपर गवर्नमेंट को काफ़ी ज़्यादा वो करना चाहिए.
हमें हमारे घर पे मम्मी पापा फ़ोन नहीं देते थे, तो दैट वाज एक्चुअली अ रीज़न बिहाइंड दोज थिंग्स कि पहले ज़माने में वो सब कम था, अब ज़्यादा हो रहा है. तो आई बिलीव कि जो गवर्नमेंट है दे जस्ट फाइंड आउट अ वे एक दूसरे पे डालने का कि यस इस पे हो रहा है, इस पे हो रहा है, बट एक्चुअली हम पेरेंट्स और टीचर्स को एक्चुअली हैज़ टू टेक अ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी कि वो चीज़ें रेगुलेट हो और कम हो.
Okay, interesting perspective there. She's saying that if you deny a child a phone, the chances are that the child will use that phone a lot more behind your back. But if you teach that child to use it in a limit, it will actually help them use it, but also within regulations. Do you think that also is an argument that's important? The fact that we shouldn't ban everything, we should allow things, but we should regulate it. That's very important.
Yeah, I believe that is very true in all its sense, because what is happening is, like you raised a point about misinformation. Why people are referring to net? Because they are not even comfortable talking to their parents, elder sister, brother, or even their closest friends. So that's why people refer to internet. If there is proper dissemination of information, then I believe they will be aware about it in its true sense, and like there will be less chances of teens getting pregnant. There will be knowledge about contraceptives, sexually transmitted diseases, and stuff like that.
Right. So a very important point that you're making here is that information is very important, but what's more important is the source of that information. It's better to get it from someone like your parent or your teacher who's informed, rather than getting it from a random article on the internet that you can't even trust.
Yes, exactly. I mean, because I was watching this movie other day, Rocky and Rani Ki Prem Kahani, and there was a scene where this actress, she was saying that we are no different species than men. We are women, and you guys are men, and we should understand each other. Like the basic questions, like topics like asking consent. In our country, I believe, like people have this thinking that if she's saying no, then she might be saying yes in some other
It also
way.
has to do a lot with the toxic movies and Bollywood culture that also has crept in. Do you think it's also very important to understand that sex education doesn't only mean biology, it doesn't only mean the things that everyone is shy to talk about, it also means consent, it also means understanding sexual well-being as well, understanding your body so much well that you don't really get into misinformation.
Definitely. In our country, one of the, not just in our country, it's a global problem. One of the biggest problems is marital consent. People think that if they are married, especially women who aren't well educated, they feel like if they are married, the man can do whatever they want with them, which is actually not true. Even marital consent is very important. Marital rape is an actual thing which is being ignored in our country at a wide range. And I feel like these things, knowing about your body, knowing about what consent is, knowing about saying yes or no, knowing about feeling comfortable in doing those things is a very important factor.
So the problem with a topic like sex education is it's a very hush-hush topic. You tend to brush it off, you tend to laugh it off. And so it's important through formal education to normalize that conversation. And when that happens, when people are talking openly about it in a non-judgmental space, then of course sexual assault rates will also come down. People will know how to conduct themselves. Consent is a very important topic in the field of sexual education. And since we're also talking about misinformation, there are credible sources on the internet as well. There are some influencers by the name of Dr. Cuterus. There's this Instagram account called Seema Anand Storytelling. So there are credible sources on the internet as well, but it is important to be able to differentiate between these sources, what is credible and what cannot be trusted, and then put the credible sources on a higher platform. And this can be done by, of course, normalizing this conversation and also giving this topic a sphere in the formal education system.
Absolutely. So clearly the concept and the argument, the fact that sex education actually will increase the number of incidents of sexual violence, it doesn't make sense, because usually when you treat a topic like a taboo, you don't really talk much about it, chances are that people find different ways to deal with it, people actually commit these crimes. But when you normalize it, when you normalize sex, when you normalize sexual education, chances are people treat it more normally. Do you think that that also could bring down sexual violence cases in India?
Definitely. I think I'll give an example for it. We all know about Nirbhaya. A minor was involved in the entire case, and that minor maybe wouldn't have done that crime if he was informed enough about the entire topic, if he was informed and educated about that topic. And there are many cases where minors are involved in such heinous crimes. And I think definitely when we talk about teaching minors about topics like consent, STIs, it's definitely hard for them to grasp it, because people, like their parents, don't talk about it. If I talk about myself, I don't think I've ever gotten a proper sex education from my parents. I've discovered it randomly. And reaching out to internet or pornographic sites and is not a definitely credible source for gathering information about such sensitive topics.
It is at the end of the day government's role to ensure that all of the information on the internet is regulated, and also the information that's given in the schools and colleges is also comprehensive.
Obviously, government plays an important role in spreading sex education and making sure that the content available online is regulated. It's not misinformation that's being spread, because already a lot kids nowadays have a lot of access to information on the internet, which isn't always good or good for their mental health as well.
The problem is a lot of this information is unregulated.
It's mostly unregulated, and they create a perception about sex and everything which is not actually true. And there's this myth that sex education actually encourages sexually risky activities, but that's not true. It does not encourage young kids to get involved in such activities. Rather, it tells them that what's right, at what age you should do this, you should take consent, what all should be considered before getting into all of this. So everything needs to be regulated by the government, definitely.
How important do you think is the role of governments and also those in charge to ensure that there are initiatives and programs? If you had to suggest something, what suggestions do you have for the government? What kind of initiatives and programs can they bring about to ensure that this sort of education is also given to students at a very young age?
Government should speak up about whatever is happening in the country. If we see the recent case where the doctor was raped, I've not seen either government have spoken about it. So they should definitely come up with this topic and talk more about it, because the more they will talk about it, the stigma will be removed. As they are the superior ones, so they have a huge role in this, because many a times we don't even know if something is wrong is happening with us, and because of the stigma, even if we know it, we are not able to talk about it.
According to me, sex education should be given to students from school level only. So the government must design a curriculum for students at school level which has regulated information, enough information and comprehensive information about this whole topic, so that students don't think that this is something they cannot talk about. If I talk about girls, puberty is a part of sex education. It's the basis of sex education. That's how we gain our secondary sexual characteristics and everything. And so many girls, even boys, are not aware about it. When changes suddenly start happening in their body, they are either like depressed, or they just don't care, and then it affects their physical as well as mental health. So the government must suggest curriculums to colleges as well as to schools to give more education to kids around that age. Like in 8th or 9th, she said there was a chapter in science which was often skipped or taught in a way that did not really give that kind of information to the kids, which was important. So the government must step in and guide schools and colleges on how to give this, how to spread this information among students.
Absolutely. And also, viewers, there is a very important link that has been drawn time and again between sexual violence cases and also such activities, such programs which impart sexual education knowledge among young adolescents as well. Do you think the more sexually educated our youngsters are, the lesser the sexual violence cases will be?
Obviously, if we teach younger kids at a very young age that what all is supposed to happen, what is supposed to happen without consent, if a girl says no, it means no, these cases will reduce drastically. This one case happened recently in Rishikesh where a guy raped his fiance on the way, and he called up few of his friends which were minors. One of that minor was in my school. We were like seat partners when we were in 6th grade. So I was completely shocked on thinking how we used to sit together, and he was also involved in this. And that at that time he was never the part of activities that took place in school. Whenever in our school a proper workshop took place regarding sex education, he was never involved in that stuff. So,
and this accused never participated in those workshops?
Never. His family was also had a political background, so they were he wasn't interested in all that, so he always skipped those things. And I guess that played a very important role, that he thought that it's very normal to be a part of such activity.
So a lot of your friends here are pointing out that if there's more sex education in India, the number of sexual violence cases will also come down, because the more you normalize education about this, the lesser there will be taboo and the lesser cases of violence.
Yes, sir, that's true up to an extent, because a well-designed curriculum will give them knowledge about the consent and their body parts, so they will have a rigorous rights about the knowledge. But the curriculum should also, the sex education should also be supported with strict laws. the sex education curriculum should also involve laws. If you go beyond those laws, what could be the implications? So that would also give a better understanding to them. So it's not just about limiting to sex education, but taking it beyond the level.
But we already have strong laws, but they're not working. There are still violence cases that's happening. So clearly we need to do something else.
Yeah, so that's one point. That is a true scenario that is happening in our country. But talking about sex education, yes, it is mandatory to teach the students from the childhood onwards. Like there are some knowledgeable books also that I've come across on the internet. So they teach young kids about good touch, bad touch, and what is consent and all that. So that could be a good beginning to that.
Absolutely. Like one of the points that you mentioned here, instead of trying to punish older men after they commit crimes, instead of trying to reform them later, it's very important to start young. It's very important to teach them young that sex education is a normal topic, and the best thing you can do, even you who are watching right now, the best thing you can do is start having a conversation about it, advocate for a change, and normalize discussion about sex education, because it's not a taboo. It's not just about biology. It's also about gender equality. It's also about consent and a lot more. That's it from my end on this episode of Campus Mirror. Join me back next week with lots more.